Most people walk into a real estate transaction believing the paperwork exists to protect them. And part of the inspiration for this entire conversation came from Vanessa Saunders, who made an incredibly powerful observation about the word standard. She pointed out that the word instantly lowers resistance. It creates automatic acceptance. And the moment I heard that framing, it exposed something much bigger happening across the industry. And that sounds reasonable. Because the industry has spent decades teaching consumers that contracts, disclosures, timelines, and standard forms are proof of safety. But this presentation is about something much deeper. It's about understanding that the real leverage in real estate is not hidden in a single paragraph. It's hidden in sequence. It's hidden in timing. It's hidden in when information is revealed, when pressure increases, and when your emotional attachment becomes too strong to walk away. The system works best when buyers feel committed before they feel informed. And once you understand that, you start seeing the process differently. This is not about conspiracy. It's about choreography. Today, I want to show you the difference between paperwork that creates informed consent and paperwork that simply documents a decision that was psychologically made long before the signatures happened. Because once you can see the pattern, the spell starts to break. This is Steve Koleno, and this is Confidential Remarks. There may not be a more powerful psychological word in real estate than the word standard. Because the moment people hear that word, they relax. They stop investigating. They stop questioning. And they assume somebody smarter, bigger, or more qualified already checked everything for them. That's the magic of the word. Not because it proves safety, but because it creates compliance. When consumers hear, "Oh, this is standard," what they think is, "Good, that means it's normal." But what often happens underneath the surface is something very different. The word standard quietly shifts the conversation away from scrutiny and toward acceptance. And that matters because something can be standard and still completely favor the system that created it. History is full of harmful systems that were once considered standard. Standard does not automatically mean fair. Standard only means repeated. And repetition has a way of making people stop asking questions. That is why the word becomes dangerous. Not because it explains anything, but because it prevents deeper inspection. In the real world, standards are supposed to protect consumers. Nutrition labels exist so companies cannot hide what's inside the product. Safety ratings exist so buyers can compare options clearly. Transparency creates trust. That's what healthy standards are designed to do. They create a floor, a minimum level of protection that benefits the public. But in real estate, many so-called standards function very differently. Instead of opening the conversation, they often close it. Instead of encouraging understanding, they encourage speed. Instead of helping buyers negotiate, they normalize whatever structure already benefits the transaction flow. And once consumers are told, this is just how it's done, many stop evaluating whether the process actually serves them. That's the critical distinction. A healthy standard protects the weaker side. A manipulative standard protects the system itself. And if questioning the process suddenly makes someone feel difficult, uneducated, or disruptive, then the process may not be designed for transparency at all. It may be designed for compliance. Most people assume the danger lives inside the paperwork, but the paperwork is usually not the trick. The setup is the trick, because by the time many buyers finally see the most important terms, several things have already happened. They've invested time. They've imagined their future in the home. They've emotionally committed. Their family is excited. Their schedule is tied up. Their financing is moving. And psychologically, they no longer feel like shoppers. They feel like owners. That emotional transition changes everything. At that point, asking hard questions suddenly feels risky. Walking away feels painful. And now the pressure is working in favor of the process. This is why timing matters more than paperwork. Because information delivered before attachment creates choice. Information delivered after attachment creates pressure. That's the choreography. And once you recognize it, you stop measuring fairness only by what is disclosed. You start measuring fairness by when it is disclosed. This graph explains one of the most important psychological dynamics in the entire home buying process. At the beginning, buyers have enormous leverage. They can walk away easily. They are emotionally neutral. They are comparing options. And they still have distance from the transaction. But as time passes, something changes. The emotional investment increases. Pressure increases. Deadlines increase. Social expectations increase. And the ability to walk away starts shrinking. Now here's the key insight. The system often waits until leverage is weakest before introducing the most complex rules, fees, disclosures, or commitments. That timing is not accidental, because once emotional attachment is high enough, many consumers stop evaluating the deal objectively. They begin protecting the outcome they already want. That's why people sign things they would have questioned earlier, not because they suddenly became less intelligent, but because their leverage disappeared. Pressure changes behavior, and any process that depends on maximum pressure before maximum clarity deserves scrutiny. Most consumers think the system works like a locked door. They imagine someone standing guard saying, "You can't come in." But that's not actually how modern leverage systems work. The system usually lets you in very easily. It welcomes you. It encourages you. It emotionally invests you. The real strategy is not blocking access. The strategy is delaying clarity. Because if critical information arrives only after emotional commitment has formed, then your ability to resist has already weakened. That's why this slide shows a moving walkway instead of a locked gate. You are allowed to enter. You are simply moved toward commitment before you fully understand the rules. And once momentum builds, reversing direction becomes psychologically difficult. That is how many systems create compliance without force. Not through intimidation, through sequencing. And when consumers understand that distinction, they stop asking only, "Was I allowed in?" And they start asking, "When was I given the information that truly mattered?" There's a massive difference between disclosure and informed consent. Real disclosure happens before commitment. It gives people room to think, room to compare, room to negotiate, and most importantly, room to walk away. That's how healthy consumer systems operate. You see pricing before you buy. You compare options before commitment. You make decisions while your leverage is still intact. But many late-stage real estate disclosures work differently. They arrive after emotional commitment is already high, after momentum has already formed, after deadlines and expectations are already in motion. At that point, the paperwork often functions less like transparency and more like a receipt. It documents the transaction after the psychological decision has already happened. And that distinction matters because informed consent at the moment of maximum pressure is not truly informed consent. It is procedural completion, and consumers deserve to understand the difference. This may be the simplest fairness test in the entire presentation. If a process is truly fair, then explaining it early costs the system nothing. Think about that carefully. If the terms are reasonable, if the fees are justified, if the structure is ethical, then transparency should not be dangerous. But if the process depends on pressure, urgency, emotional attachment, or timing to secure agreement, then the fairness may not be coming from the terms themselves. It may be coming from sequence. And sequence can be incredibly powerful because people make very different decisions under pressure than they make with distance and clarity. That is why timing matters so much. A process that only works when consumers are emotionally trapped is not proving fairness. It is proving dependency on leverage. And once you understand that, you stop judging systems only by whether paperwork exists. You start judging systems by whether consumers had a meaningful opportunity to evaluate the information before pressure took over. So what is the actual cheat code? It's surprisingly simple. Get access to information before pressure enters the room. That changes everything. Read before emotion takes over. Ask questions before momentum builds. Understand the financial structure before social pressure and deadlines begin influencing your decisions. Because once pressure enters the room, your psychology changes. You become outcome focused instead of analysis focused, and that's when leverage disappears. The smartest consumers are not necessarily the people who read the fastest. They are the people who ask early. They ask before they are emotionally attached, before they picture their furniture in the house, before their identity becomes connected to the outcome. That's how you regain negotiating power. Not by becoming cynical, but by moving your awareness earlier in the process. Clarity early. Questions early. Consent early. That's the real cheat code. I want to leave you with 3 simple questions. Because once you ask these questions consistently, the entire process starts looking different. Question number 1. Standard for whom? Is this structure genuinely protecting me? Or is it protecting the efficiency of the system? Question number 2. Can I read this early? Because if transparency only appears after pressure increases, then timing itself may be part of the leverage. And question number 3. Is this a disclosure or a receipt? Does this information give me real choices? Or is it simply documenting a commitment that has already become psychologically difficult to reverse? Those 3 questions change how people see contracts. They change how people see pressure. And most importantly, they change how people protect themselves. Because the system only works when nobody names the pattern. Now you know the pattern. Now you know the code. This has been Confidential Remarks.